Long before you ever question the nature of your life, before you doubt the stories you were taught, before you experience synchronicities, déjà vu, or sudden bursts of intuition, something else happens quietly inside you. Something subtle, something ancient, a whisper, not a sound, not a voice, more like a pressure, an inner nudge, a soft vibration behind your everyday thoughts. Most people feel it for years without knowing what it is. Some feel it in childhood, others during emotional collapse, and some only when life becomes strangely still. But no matter when it comes, the whisper always carries the same message: there's more inside you than what you've been living. It is the first sign of the hidden door. For most of your life, you've walked through the world thinking outwardly, focusing on tasks, responsibilities, routines, expectations. The outside world teaches you to keep your attention on the surface. School, work, screens, opinions, noise. You're told who you are, what to believe, how to behave, how to fit in, how to function, but your inner world, the real world, stays untouched. This is why the hidden door remains invisible to the majority of humanity. Not because it's hard to find, but because we've been trained to never look in its direction. And yet, despite the noise, despite the conditioning, there comes a moment when something inside you stirs, something wakes, something presses against the edges of your normal perception. You begin sensing that your thoughts are not contained within your brain. You begin feeling emotions that don't belong to your current circumstances. You begin noticing odd synchronicities, subtle patterns, unusual coincidences. You begin experiencing a strange familiarity with people or places you've never met. It's like your soul is gently tapping from the inside of a locked room, hoping you'll hear it. This is the whisper. This is the invitation. This is the first brush against the hidden door inside your mind. For some, the sensation is soft, a quiet feeling that life should be more meaningful. For others, it arrives as discomfort, a heaviness in the chest, a restlessness in the heart, a deep dissatisfaction with the path they're on. You start sensing that the identity you've been living isn't the one you were meant to embody. You begin to realize that the version of you the world knows is not the real you. And that realization is dangerous, not because it harms you, but because it threatens the entire structure that benefits from your silence. Systems of control depend on people who never look inward. They depend on people who follow the script, who repeat the patterns, who believe the story they've been handed without ever questioning the author. The whisper is the moment you step outside that script, even if you don't realize it yet. That's why synchronicities appear around this time. That's why you feel watched, but in a comforting, familiar way. That's why your intuition grows louder. That's why you start feeling like your life is undergoing a subtle recalibration. Your soul has begun knocking. Your consciousness has begun shifting. The door has begun glowing faintly, but unmistakably on the horizon of your awareness. It doesn't swing open yet. It doesn't demand anything yet. But its presence is undeniable. The hidden door inside your mind isn't a concept. It's not imagination. It's not metaphor. It's a threshold, a boundary between who you were trained to be and who you actually are. And the moment you hear that whisper, the moment you sense something behind your thoughts, you've already taken the first step toward it. In the next chapter, you'll discover why the world has been designed to keep that door closed, and why almost no one is encouraged to ever open it. If the hidden door inside your mind is real, and if it leads to a level of awareness that could change everything about how you perceive yourself and the world, then a question naturally follows. Why did no one tell you about it? Why did you grow up learning math, dates, rules, and memorized facts, but nothing about consciousness, intuition, inner truth, or the power of your own awareness? Why were you taught how to follow, but never how to look inward? Why did no one mention that your mind contains a doorway that can only be opened by you? The answer is not dark in the way people imagine. It's not about villains hiding in shadows. It's something far more subtle and far more effective. The world you were born into was constructed not through conspiracy, but through repetition to keep people focused outward. Because a society full of inward-looking, self-aware individuals becomes impossible to control, predict, or manipulate. And so, generation after generation, the same pattern repeats. The outer world becomes a distraction. The inner world becomes forgotten. The first wall. Education. From childhood, you were placed into a system that rewarded memorization, conformity, and obedience. You weren't taught to question your thoughts, you were taught to follow instructions. You weren't taught how your mind works, you were taught how to perform tasks. The real curriculum was not reading or writing. It was conditioning. It whispered, look outward, don't explore inward. The hidden door doesn't survive well in environments like this. It stays unopened, unacknowledged, unmentioned. The second wall. Social expectation. As you aged, the next layer of programming emerged, the pressure to fit in. Be normal, be acceptable, be predictable. You learned to shape yourself around what others wanted you to be. Parents, teachers, friends, partners, society. Piece by piece, your authentic self was pushed deeper into the shadows, sealed behind the inner door you didn't know existed. Every expectation acted like a brick. Every fear of judgment became mortar. And without realizing it, the world built a psychological cage around your deepest truth on the third wall. Distraction. Modern life is engineered for noise, not literal noise, but mental noise. Endless scrolling, constant news, advertisements, notifications, entertainment on demand, opinions everywhere. Your mind is kept so busy responding, consuming, reacting, and absorbing that it never has a chance to turn inward. Why? Because silence is dangerous. In silence, you start hearing the whisper behind your thoughts. In silence, the hidden door becomes visible. In silence, the truth begins to rise. And a world built on external distraction relies on you never experiencing that silence for long enough to notice what's inside you. The fourth wall, identity programming. Here is the most subtle form of control. You weren't just given rules. You were given an identity. You were told who you are supposed to be, what you should value, how life should look, and what success means. These labels become a kind of armor, not to protect you, but to protect the system from you. Because once you accept an identity handed to you, you stop searching for the one that lives behind the inner door. You forget your inner architecture. You forget your original self. You forget your inner sovereignty. And that forgetfulness is what the outer world depends on, what they never expected. But here's the irony. Despite centuries of conditioning, distraction, and identity programming, the hidden door never disappears. It waits, it watches, it listens. And the moment your inner whisper returns, the illusion begins to crack. The world may have been designed to keep the door closed, but it cannot stop you once you begin sensing where the handle is. Long before modern society buried the inner world under noise, distraction, and conditioning, ancient civilizations understood something extraordinary. The greatest mysteries of existence were not outside you, but inside you. They believed the human mind contained a doorway, a threshold between ordinary perception and an expanded state of consciousness where truth could be seen directly. This door was not metaphorical to them. It was real, measurable, reachable through practice, ritual, and self-discovery. And across continents, languages, and eras, these civilizations all left behind fragments of the same blueprint, a map of the hidden door. Let's step into their world. Egypt, the temple of the inner gate. The Egyptians never built temples for worship. They built temples for awakening. Inside the walls of Dendera and Luxor lie carvings of a figure stepping through an opening in his own mind, a literal doorway emerging from the head. Priests call this passage the gate of the hidden room. Initiates spent years preparing for a single moment, the moment when the inner gate opened and their perception expanded beyond the physical world. They believed he who enters the hidden room remembers who he is. This is the earliest known record of the inner door. The Gnostics, the forgotten teaching. The Gnostics taught something too dangerous for later empires to allow. The kingdom of heaven is within you, not above you. To them, the divine was not a distant being in the sky, but a light buried inside human consciousness. Their entire spiritual practice revolved around turning inward to open this inner doorway. They warned that the world, the outer illusion, would always try to keep people from looking inside themselves. And for this teaching, they were nearly wiped from history. Sumer and Babylon, the first maps of the mind. The Sumerians left clay tablets describing a sealed chamber within every human being, a place where truth and destiny meet. This chamber, they said, could be accessed only through deep introspection and symbolic initiation. Later, the Babylonians developed rituals designed to help seekers unseal this chamber. They believed that when a person opened it, they gained insight into the nature of reality, the self, and time. It was not superstition. It was psychology, thousands of years ahead of its time. The Hermetics, the door of the all. Hermetic teachings, which influenced Greece, Egypt, Rome, and the medieval mystics, stated plainly, as within, so without. They taught that the external world is a reflection of the internal one, and the inner door is the point where this reflection becomes visible. Once opened, the seeker sees the illusion of the world and the truth behind it. Hermetic adepts kept these teachings secret because they understood that someone who steps through the inner door becomes immune to external authority, and systems of control could not allow that. The Eastern mystics, the gate of 1,000 petals. In ancient India and Tibet, the inner door was described differently, not as a literal doorway, but as a lotus, 1,000-petaled gate at the crown of the mind. When it opened, the seeker awakened to a higher state of awareness. They believe that awakening doesn't come from worship or obedience, but from self-realization. This knowledge spread through meditation lineages, mostly hidden from the public, protected in monasteries for centuries. The global pattern, different names, different symbols, different myths, but always the same truth. Every ancient civilization taught that the path to awakening lies inside the mind and that a hidden door blocks the way. They also taught that this door remains closed to most because the world distracts them away from it. Yet here you are noticing the cracks in the illusion, feeling the whisper inside, sensing that something in you is trying to open. Which brings us to the true obstacle you must face. Not the world, not society, not institutions. The obstacle is within you. If the hidden door inside your mind truly exists, and every ancient civilization insisted it does, then why doesn't everyone walk through it? Why do so many sense something deeper calling them, yet never cross the threshold? Because standing between you and that doorway is a guardian, not a creature, not a demon, not an external enemy, but a force inside your own consciousness, one designed to keep you from seeing anything beyond the limits of your current identity. Ancient mystics called it the gatekeeper. Modern psychology calls it the conditioned mind. David Icke describes it as the program that maintains the illusion. Whatever name you choose, its purpose is always the same. To stop you from opening the hidden door, the guardian's first weapon, fear of the unknown. The inner door leads to expanded perception, but your conditioned mind fears expansion. It whispers, stay where you are. Don't look deeper. Don't ask that question. Don't follow that instinct. This fear doesn't show up dramatically. It arrives quietly. You feel it as hesitation, as self-doubt, as the sudden urge to scroll your phone instead of sitting in silence. As the tension that rises when your intuition tells you something the world insists isn't true. The part of you that senses truth is always trying to guide you to the door. The part of you afraid of truth always tries to pull you away. This tug of war is the first battle every seeker faces. The second weapon, identity lock-in. Here's the secret most people never realize. Your current sense of self is the prison. You've been shaped by childhood, society, authority, culture, trauma, into a personality that believes, I am this, I am not that. This identity becomes the cage that keeps you from exploring your deeper nature. The guardian's job is to keep that identity intact. It tells you you can't change. You're not capable. You must stay the way you were taught to be. Who do you think you are to question reality? This identity lock is the psychological barrier at the door. Only when you realize my identity isn't me, it's a mask I've been wearing, does the guardian begin to weaken. The third weapon, distraction, the modern guardian. Thousands of years ago, mystics faced silence, deserts, caves, mountains. Today, you face something far more difficult, a world engineered to keep your attention anywhere except inward. The Guardian now uses endless notifications, emotional triggers, overstimulation, fear-based media, social comparison, algorithmic loops, constant noise, endless busyness. Every distraction is a doorway away from the hidden door. The modern mind is never alone long enough to hear the whisper behind the noise. The Guardian doesn't need to fight you. It just needs to keep you busy. The fourth weapon, emotional resistance. You felt this before. The moment you get close to a breakthrough, the moment clarity begins to rise, the moment you finally glimpse something profound, suddenly you get tired, you get irritated, your mind starts wandering, you get emotional for no reason. You feel resistance building like a wall. This is not random. This is the Guardian activating its final defense. Because if you pass through the inner door, you stop being programmable. You stop being dependent. You stop being afraid. And nothing threatens the conditioned mind more than your freedom. The truth about the Guardian is not your enemy. It is a threshold, a test, a mirror. Its purpose is to ensure that only those who are truly ready, truly willing, truly awake can pass through the hidden door. The Guardian blocks you until the moment you realize it cannot actually stop you, because the gatekeeper is made of fear, and the door opens the moment you stop running from yourself. But to pass through it, you must face what every seeker eventually encounters, the moment where nothing outside you can help. Only your inner courage can. There is a moment, a tiny, fragile, almost imperceptible moment, when the hidden door inside your mind begins to open. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't burst open with flashing light or dramatic revelation. It begins quietly, softly, like the first crack in a long-forgotten wall. Most people miss it. They're too distracted, too fearful, too conditioned to notice the shift. But if you're paying attention, if you're listening, if you're willing, you'll feel the door begin to move. This chapter is about that moment, the first sign, an unexplained stillness. It doesn't matter what you're doing, walking, sitting, scrolling your phone, lying awake at night, suddenly something changes. A stillness slips into your awareness. Not silence, exactly. More like the noise around you seems less solid, less important, less real. You feel as though you've stepped slightly outside of your normal perception, like something inside you paused the world for a second. The ancients called this the breath before awakening. Your mind doesn't know what to do with this stillness. It tries to fill it. It tries to explain it, but awareness, true awareness, just watches. And in that watching, the door begins to shift. The second sign, you notice what you never saw before. Ordinary things suddenly feel different. A conversation feels off, like you can sense the emotion behind the words. Memory rises unexpectedly, but with new meaning. You look at your own life, your job, your relationships, your habits, and something inside you whispers, this isn't how things really are. This is the moment the veil thins. The world doesn't change, your perception of it does. Colors feel sharper, sounds seem layered. Thoughts appear as objects rather than truths. It's not hallucination. It's awareness stepping out of autopilot. The door is now slightly open. The third sign. You hear the question that changes everything. Not out loud, not from a voice, but from the deepest part of your being. The question is different for everyone, but it always feels like something ancient waking inside you. It might be, who am I really? What have I been avoiding? Why do I feel like I'm remembering something? What if everything I've been taught about myself is wrong? Why do I feel like something is calling me? This question is not curiosity. It's recognition, the recognition that the door leads back to the truth you once knew but forgot. Once this question appears, nothing in your life will feel the same, because now awareness has turned inward. The fourth sign, emotions suddenly shift. The moment the hidden door begins to open, your emotional world reacts. You may feel a wave of peace, or a sudden burst of anxiety, or tears you can't explain, or a strange mix of clarity and confusion. This happens because part of you is awakening and part of you is losing control. Your ego senses the shift. It knows that once the door opens fully, it will no longer dominate your perception. So it fights. But your true self, the awareness behind all experience, simply observes this emotional turbulence is not a setback. It's a sign that you're close, very close. The fifth sign, intuition takes over. You begin noticing impulses that feel guided, subtle nudges, inner direction, a feeling that something is drawing you forward. You start trusting your inner voice in ways you never have before. This is the moment the door opens wide enough for light to spill through, because intuition is the language of the deeper consciousness beyond the door. When intuition becomes loud, the door is almost open. The moment of opening, finally, there comes a split second. Here's a moment so delicate you can only recognize it afterward, when your perception flips. It's as if awareness steps out of your thoughts, your emotions, your identity, and sees everything from a higher vantage point, not with your eyes, not with your mind, but with your being. The door doesn't open outward, it opens inward into a deeper dimension of your own consciousness. And once you've glimpsed that dimension, you can never fully return to who you were. But this opening is not the end. It's the beginning, because the moment the door opens, the illusion reacts. When the hidden door inside your mind finally opens, the first thing that collapses is your old idea of reality. Not the physical world that remains, but the way you perceived it. What once felt solid and unquestionable begins to feel thin, almost transparent, as if you were looking at life through a window you never knew was there. The strange thing is that nothing external changes. Your job is the same, your relationships are the same, your daily routine may be identical, but your awareness is no longer confined. The world behind the hidden door is not another dimension or some mystical paradise. It is the same world, but seen with unfiltered perception. It is reality without the conditioning, without the programming, without the inherited fears that once shaped every decision you made. You begin to notice how deeply people live inside illusions created for them by culture, family, technology, and society. You see how most speak from scripts they didn't write, defend beliefs they never questioned, and chase goals implanted into them long before they could think for themselves. This isn't judgment. It's recognition, because you were once inside that same dream. The first truth of the world behind the door is this. 1. You see through the illusion of control. You begin to realize how predictable human behavior becomes when people are disconnected from themselves. Fear controls them, approval controls them, stories controls them. They defend their limitations more fiercely than their freedom. But now you standing beyond the door, see how fragile that system actually is. It only works on people who don't know who they are. And suddenly you are not one of them. 2. You recognize the power of your attention. Before awakening, attention feels like a small thing, something stolen by notifications, scattered by stress, manipulated by whoever shouts the loudest. But once the door opens, attention becomes a weapon, a shield, a compass. You realize that whatever you give your attention to becomes your reality. Fear grows when you feed it. Peace expands when you choose it. The world behind the door teaches one of the oldest truths known to ancient mystics. Your attention is the architect of your experience. This is why control systems fear awakened individuals, because someone who knows how to use their attention cannot be steered. 3. Your intuition becomes louder than your thoughts. Thoughts used to dominate you, dragging you into anxiety or habit before you even realized it. But now, intuition, the quiet intelligence behind your mind, emerges with clarity. It guides you, warns you, pulls you toward people and experiences aligned with your deeper nature. Intuition is not mysterious anymore. It is the voice of the world behind the door. 4. You begin shedding what no longer belongs to you. Old relationships may feel different. Old goals may fade. Old identities may crumble. This shedding is not loss. It is liberation. You are no longer living from the outside inward, but from the inside outward. What once took years of confusion now becomes obvious in seconds. This is for me, this is not. This expands me. This drains me. Awareness becomes your guide, and life becomes simpler, sharper, more aligned. 5. Responsibility replaces fear. Awakening doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger. You stop blaming the world. You stop waiting for someone to save you. You stop repeating old patterns unconsciously. The world behind the door requires courage, because now you see clearly enough to make conscious choices. And once you see truth, you can no longer pretend you don't. This is the real beginning of transformation. 6. You realize awakening is not an end. It's the first step. The world behind the door is not a final destination. It is the threshold of a new life. Awakening doesn't mean you're finished. It means you've finally started. You no longer move through the world asleep. You move through it aware, alive, present, and connected to a deeper intelligence that was always inside you. Now the question becomes, what will you do with this awareness. Who will you become after stepping through the door? Your journey begins now